What will you be doing 40 years from now? There's a good chance I'll still be alive, being blessed with good genes. I'll turn 93, which should tell you what I turn today. It's my birthday. Yeah. 40 years from now, I'll be 22 years into my retirement, and if I still have my mind, I hope to be in good enough shape to say Mass once in a while. What will you be doing 40 years from now? Some of you in this parish will be enjoying your heavenly reward. The youngest here will be well into middle age, and the rest of you will be old. It is, of course, total speculation and perhaps sheer folly to look so far into the future, aside from our oldest members. Who among us knows for sure what the future holds? But there is one thing 40 years into the future that I can predict with near certainty if our present reality and current patterns persist. Those of you who remain members of St. Paul's and those who join you in the next 2 generations will not be sitting inside this sacred pile of stones we now call home on the corner of South Saginaw and 3rd Streets. This building, with its massive pipe organ and Last Supper mosaic and signed Tiffany window, may still stand, but it will no longer belong to you. Perhaps the parish community will still exist, but it will meet somewhere else. $130,000. Hold on to that number for a moment. 23%. Hold on to that figure for a longer moment. This parish was blessed back in the day with lots of people, some of them quite rich, who put money aside for this parish's future. We use quite a bit of that money now to help pay for mission and ministry and building, to change lives for the better. Some of that money comes from a portion of the gains from investments. We draw from this at what we hope is a sustainable rate. The rest of that money comes from principal, money taken from the body of the investments before gains on it ever accrue. Eating the seed corn, as we say on the farm. We take this money to balance the budget, to finish paying for the mission and ministry and building we've said is important, to change lives for the better. Next year, we plan to take $130,000 from the principal to finish what we've started. Spending from savings is not something new in this parish. We do it every year. It is a long-term trend, and it is not sustainable. 40 years into the future, if current patterns persist, that money our ancestors socked away will be gone, and St. Paul's will not be able to afford the building, much less afford mission and ministry. The parish community may well exist, but it will meet somewhere else. Every year on the first Sunday of Advent, the theme is the end times. In the Synoptic Gospels, what Jesus says to his disciples is often called the little apocalypse, to differentiate it from the book of Revelation, the big apocalypse. Today's passage comes from the 21st chapter of Luke, and like the accounts in Matthew's Gospel and in Mark's, Jesus gives his warning in response to people who gape and gawp at the majestic temple in Jerusalem. Luke writes, "When some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, Jesus said, 'As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. They will all be thrown down.' 'Teacher, when will this be?' they asked him, 'and what will be the sign that this is about to take place?' And Jesus continues with what some call prophecy remembered, a gospel story written down after the temple was destroyed by the Romans in the year 70, recalling Jesus' prediction 40 years earlier that the temple, that sacred pile of stones beautifully decorated and appointed, would no longer be theirs. And then, after all this, comes today's passage, cosmic signs and sage advice, and the promise of redemption for those who are faithful, for those who prepare. After the temple's destruction, the Jewish people were scattered, but Judaism survived. It was no longer temple-focused, but it survived. It survives to this day. And the followers of Jesus, many of them still with Jewish roots and practices, they were scattered as well. But the followers of Jesus, the followers on the way, Christians as we came to be known, we became ever more church-building focused as the centuries passed. The grand cathedrals in England that are our heritage, and the massive neo-Gothic church buildings in this country that are our inheritance, including this pile of sacred stones you're sitting in right now, and the suburban prayer barn modern churches that dot the landscape, all testify to this. Grand and glorious church buildings are important, or may be important, for a number of reasons. I'm not here to argue against church buildings, against this grand and glorious church building necessarily. That argument is for another day, another sermon. Today's argument, today's sermon faces squarely our present reality, our current pattern. You, the people who use this sacred pile of stones, you, the people who inherited it, you, the people who want mission and ministry and building to continue and to continue sustainably 40 years into the future, you need to pay attention to the signs of the times. The people in Jesus' day had little control over what happened to them. Imperial Rome was too powerful, and the temple fell. You have more control over your future. This temple needn't fall. That brings me back to the figure I asked you to hold on to, 23%. 23% of the total is what you and I plan to give next year to help pay for mission and ministry and building. We plan to give $163,000, less than 1/4 of what we say it takes to change people's lives. Our ancestors' money makes up the rest, 77%. And of that, spending $130,000 of the principal a year eating the seed corn is what will eventually cause this temple to fall. In other words, to be sustainable, our 23% needs to be more like 43%. I don't think most of you know this. No one's ever told you. And if you're not responsible for paying attention to the numbers, why would you ask? Now you know. Now is the time to change our present reality. Now is the time to change our current pattern. 40 of you have pledged so far, some of you for the first time. Thank you. If you pledged a nominal amount, generous by your accounting, but much less than you could, I challenge you to fill out a new pledge form with a much larger number. If your pledge is as high as you're used to, perhaps you'll take another look and fill out a new pledge form and bump it up a bit. Every increased pledge gets us closer to the 43% we need for our long-term sustainability. And if you've truly done all you can, please let your pledge stand as it is. I'm not asking anyone to starve or to get evicted. 40 of you haven't pledged yet. Now is the time. Every new pledge changes our present reality and our current pattern. Every new pledge, whether it's $1 a week or 100, gets us closer to that sustainable figure of 43%. What will you be doing 40 years from now? Will one of you be writing the history of what was St. Paul's? Looking at this 40-year-old sermon by a long-forgotten rector as prophecy remembered? Or will scores of you fill the pews of this sacred pile of stones on the corner of South Saginaw and 3rd with a mission and ministry vital to Flint's needs, whatever they will be in the year 2059? If that's the case, please look me up. But for God's sake, don't dig me up. Maybe your very lucky St. Paul's rector then, who is but a child today, will invite this old priest back to say Mass.